Okay, so that's good. That's good. Thank you very much. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues. It's a great pleasure that today we present a webinar on social acceptance and community engagement, a crucial step for innovative technologies boosting the energy transition that brings together CRM-geothermal and SIGs, two projects that are very much involved with energy and critical raw materials and try to create an ecosystem to promote renewable energy. The speakers for today will be Catherine Kaling, Paul Mitchell, Jane Sharman, Ricardo Sakartekui, I think. I pronounced it quite strangely. Sorry for that, Ricardo. Ana Delicado and Ana Prades. The session is recorded, but of course we will respect anonymity for the people that they attend. And if you have any questions, please use the questions and answer chat here at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So I will ask Catherine Kaling, which is geophysicist and also coordinator of the CRM-geothermal, to step and take the floor. Perhaps, Catherine, before you just discuss about the project and so on, if you say just few words about yourself, so the rest of the people, the ones that don't know you, just know something about you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Pavlos, for the nice introduction. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I think you can already see my screen. Is it correct, Pavlos? Yeah, all fine. So my name is Katrin Keeling. I'm the project manager of the CRM Geothermal project. I'm working at the Helmholtz Center for Geosciences in Potsdam in Germany. And yeah, as Pavlos had said, I'm a geophysicist by education, but I switched to project management already a while ago and spent the last 8-9 years in the geoenergy section of GFZ in Potsdam coordinating European projects. And one of these projects is the CRM Geothermal project, which I'm going to introduce to you today. It's about raw materials from geothermal fluids and their occurrence, enrichment, and extraction. And you can see some of our colleagues in the project here on the first slide. So the idea for the project came from the fact that large amounts of critical raw materials are needed for the energy and the digital transition in Europe. You can see from the figure alone the transition from combustion cars to electric vehicles increases the amount of raw materials needed, and also the energy transition and the infrastructure for the renewable energy technologies needs a lot of raw materials. And those materials are considered critical by the European Commission because they are exposed to political and market risks, and that's why Europe needs really a resilient and domestic CRM supply chain. On the other hand, we have seen that geothermal fluids contain some of these elements, so these valuable elements like metals that are dissolved in the geothermal fluids, and we have made some preliminary calculations that have shown that CRM extraction from geothermal fluids has a potential to cover a significant percentage of current and future needs of CRMs to the EU. With that, we are contributing to the European Critical Raw Materials Act. So if we are able to extract really these elements from the fluid, we would contribute to those two goals of the Critical Raw Materials Act of the EU, the 10% extraction and the 40% EU processing goal. And we would very much want to make a contribution to this, these aims. The concept that we are proposing in the project is very simple. So we would like to combine the extraction of heat or electricity and the extraction of valuable elements from geothermal fluids. So we would have a geothermal well that is going into a geothermal reservoir, pumping hot and CRM-rich water to the surface, and at the surface we would extract the heat, and then in a second step extract the raw material from the fluid, and in the end, by a second borehole, inject again the depleted and colder fluid to the underground. The advantages of this process are very clear. So we would maximize the returns on investment for the operators. We would avoid additional land use and really minimize environmental impact of mining. Essentially, the aim is to make mining invisible. In the project, we have answered to the Horizon Europe call, Innovation for Responsible EU Sourcing of Primary Raw Materials. We are 20 partners in the project, so university, research institutes, but also companies or associations. And we also have 19 affiliated entities. The project has started already in 2022, and we are about to finish in April 2026. So now really in the phase where we can present some of the results. I would also like to introduce shortly the main activities of the project. So firstly, we have established an overview over the potential for raw materials in geothermal fluids. I will show a bit more details in a second. Then we wanted to determine the source of selected CRMs, their mobility and potential for sustained extraction from geothermal brines by looking at the host rocks from which those fluids are produced, but also comparing this to the fluid composition and finding out how quickly, for example, the fluid can be recharged once it is depleted. Then we are developing and optimizing innovative extraction technologies for selected CRMs and also assessing the environmental, social, economic viability. And that's the main topic of today's webinar, of course. Finally, we are demonstrating our approach at a pilot site in Cornwall and will test the extraction of one technology at the scale of a mini plant. I will highlight a few of the results up to now. So we have established the CRM-geothermal Fluid Atlas, which is providing really public data on CRMs contained in the geothermal fluids. We wanted to have an overview over all the different critical raw materials that are contained in geothermal fluids, regardless of the fact whether we have the technical capability to extract them or whether they are economically reasonable to extract, but just to have first an overview of what is actually in the fluids. The CRM-geothermal Fluid Atlas builds largely on the database from the Reflect project, the previous project, but we've also added additional data analysis from fluid sampling within the project and also extended the Fluid Atlas to the East African Rift. So now we are covering Europe and the East African Rift, and the Fluid Atlas, the database, is now available at the website of our partner from the University of Miskolc. You can find the link here below the map, which is showing some of our data points in Tanzania, actually in the East African Rift. And based on this database, our partners from Invaluable have built the AI-based lithium estimation tool. This is a tool that can be used, for example, if you have old fluid data points where the major elements have been measured, but lithium, for example, has not been measured previously. So based on the knowledge that you have on the other anions and cations and other parameters, you can put this data into the tool, and the tool will then estimate the lithium concentration of your fluid. Here in the example, we have a lithium value of 212 milligrams per liter, and then you can see in the center of the figure, the waterfall shapely plot, the contribution of each of the parameters that have been put into the model on the lithium estimation. That is in the end 219 milligrams per liter, so relatively close to what was actually measured. If you would like to test the lithium estimation tool, please go to the website of Inlecom, crm.inlecom.eu. And yeah, you can just test the tool and see its applicability. And if you would like to find out more details about the methodology behind it, we recommend to read the deliverable, and also the link is again here below on the bottom of the slide. I also mentioned already that we develop and optimize lithium extraction, CRM extraction technologies, and one extraction technology is actually the helium extraction. We have tested several types of polymers. You can see here in figure A, 5 different tubular polymers that were tested in this autoclave, which is shown in figure B. And then we measured via gas chromatograph how much helium we can actually extract via these different tubular polymers. And actually, two of them have been identified as most reliable and cost effective. That were the PDMS and PTFE. I'm not going to pronounce the full names, it's too complicated. And those two were also tested already in the field in Cornwall, and we have seen really that they are well suitable to separate the gas from the liquid without interrupting the geothermal energy production. So you can really extract the gas from the fluid phase. However, the selectivity was not so good for helium, so we are now improving again the process to become more selective for helium. And also at the bottom again, there was a link to the deliverable on this extraction technology. Yeah, and as I said, we test the things in Cornwall at our pilot site. Our main partners in Cornwall are Geothermal Engineering Limited and Cornish Lithium. Actually, the technical testing focuses on the boreholes of Cornish Lithium at United Downs, but then especially the social aspects, we are relying on the experience from Geothermal Engineering Limited, and you will also see in the next presentations what was already done at their site in terms of societal engagement. Our partner for the social aspect is also Levin Sources, a responsible mining consultancy, and they have developed the SLO guidelines, which are going to be presented in the next talk. And with that, I'm already through. I just want to advertise also our CRM-geothermal conference. We are going to host it on 25th February 2026 in Offenburg, Germany, one day prior to the Geotherm 2026. And there you can get full insights into the results from the project and get in contact with our researchers and innovators. And with that, I would like to thank you for your interest. And if you have any questions, as Pavlos has already mentioned, please write them into the Q&A tool.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Katrin. I don't think that we have yet a question, but we still have 2 minutes before we have our next presentation. So I will make a very quick question, just in case it comes on the subject that you mentioned on helium extraction, and I was wondering if you have also foresee within this method that you try to separate and extract the helium, if also you will measure the quantity of the helium or somehow you get some sort of numerical value.
Well, yeah, definitely. So yes, first we can measure the total volume of gas extracted, and secondly, we can also measure the concentration of helium in this gas. And well, the aim is really to have it more purely, to have really just helium in the end. But for this, the researchers have said now that multiple steps are necessary. So they need an enrichment process after the extraction from the fluid to come to a commercial product in the end.
Of course. And still, because one can also see that perhaps there might be also an additional application of the method and the equipment that you're using, and that might be also measuring hydrogen on the field at some point if you have, if you make the whole setting quite available that you can carry it also on the field. And, whenever you find a spring, let's say you stick a probe and then you measure for helium. That's something for the future, of course, but that will be interesting.
Yeah, but I think more or less this is what our colleagues have already done during the field trips. So when they had the sampling campaigns especially in East Africa, they did also the measurements of the gas on site. And as far as I know, they get the results pretty quickly. So on the one hand, I think it's not the same for all different types of gas, and I don't want to say anything wrong, but in principle, some of the gases they can already analyze on site. And if you've seen the gas chromatograph, it comes in a box. So essentially, you can also take this on site and measure on site. But of course, they also take samples that they analyze in the lab then.
Yeah, that's very handy. Okay, thank you very much for that. Thank you for answering that question, Katrine. So we now move to our next speaker, which is gonna talk us about for social license to operate guidelines. So that will be presented by Paul Mitchell from Living Sources. Paul, if you would like to switch on your camera if possible, say a few words about yourself, and we're eager to hear your speech. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Sorry, I don't actually have a camera. I'm
Ah,
so
okay, that's fine, no
old
worries.
that I exist in Victorian times, so apologize for that. My background is originally as a minerals engineering um, background from Camberwell School of Mines in the UK a long time ago, but I've spent the last 35 years working on environmental, social, and governance aspects of mainly mining projects. So I was brought into this project to consider the uh, aspects around social license to operate. So considering these combined geothermal and metal extraction projects, what is social license to operate? What does it mean? So this is an area that's been very extensively analysed in academic uh, circles and journals. It's been very uh, well researched, but in practical terms, for the day-to-day operation to understand, essentially it's about how a company and its activities, the project, can meet the expectations of the local communities and the wider society, and essentially get a consent from those communities and the other stakeholders, both locally and in the wider landscape, to accept and approve of the project. Um, it's not the same as a legal license, although they are linked, obviously. Um, Without a legal license, it's much more difficult to get, or probably impossible in most cases, to get social license to operate. The communities will know that if legal requirements are not being met, that's unlikely to uh, re relate to project getting acceptance and approval easily. Um, and ultimately, the absence of the social license to operate is more likely to lead to withdrawal of support by local communities, for example, and possibly to active opposition of these kinds of projects. So it's important, but it's not as well defined as legal license, and it's a very fluid thing. So it's not fixed. So a project that has weak uh, acceptance and approval, for example, can work to transform that into a better position. Equally, a company or a project that has a strong social license to operate can do something terribly wrong and end up undermining their position and undermining their social license to operate. So this is an ongoing process. It's not something like an environmental impact assessment that gets done at the beginning of the project. There needs to be a commitment to maintaining social license to operate throughout the life of the project. And the next speaker, Jane, will talk a bit more about that. So just a little bit of background in terms of the preparation. So we tried to look at what was driving support and resistance for combined extraction projects, leaning heavily on what the mining sector had experienced. Um, this process ran from, I think, around June 2023 to May 2025, so it wasn't a short process. And as Katrin mentioned, it was Levin Sources that I work for who undertook this work. They're a consulting company that does a lot of work on responsible mining. We then, based on that detailed research, drafted the good practice guidelines, trying to distill what was a very academic area into practical guidance that non-experts in projects could actually implement on a day-to-day basis. So we didn't really want to just generate more academic research information. It really needs to be practical and something that could be implemented at the ground level. We did some consultation workshops to test the ideas with local communities and other stakeholders, and then revised and finalised the guidelines. And those are now available online, have been issued and completed. So first and foremost, in terms of who the guidelines are aimed at, it's really for the projects. The idea is that the projects don't always have people within their project team, particularly in the early phases of these kinds of extractive projects, who know how to deal with communities, who know how to engage effectively and positively with a wide range of stakeholders. So again, coming to the next talk with Jane, that's a local company who are very well versed and done a great job in outreach to stakeholders. But in many settings, at the early stage of these projects, they're not looking to engage with stakeholders. They're looking to get the technical and financial aspects of the projects up and running and off the ground and proven to be feasible. So this is for them. This is for the non-experts in projects who need to do a better job of engaging and developing social license to operate. We've also made it, of course, available to other stakeholders, including local communities. It's in the public domain, and it's written in a way that will help local communities and other stakeholders understand what good practice looks like, and essentially to help them to hold projects to be more accountable. So it's a resource essentially for local communities and other stakeholders to be able to build their own capacity to understand how these projects should be operating. Obviously, this is a very short piece. I won't be able to go through everything, but essentially the guidelines cover context and the background, give some advice on how to use them. There's some principles that underpin the whole concept of the guidance. And then the guidelines themselves are split into three areas: preparation, effective engagement, and then the maintenance of the social license to operate. And there is also an extensive annotated bibliography based on a review of many different research and applied documents. So if anybody wants to dig deeper into a particular aspect or a particular region or a particular commodity, that bibliography will hopefully point you in the right direction. So the principles that we've talked about in the guidance are only a limited number. First and foremost is to be legally compliant. It's not the same as social license to operate, but unless you're legally compliant, it's unlikely that you're going to have social license to operate. Next is to do no harm. So as well as doing stakeholder engagement, the project needs to be doing lots of other things around environmental and social management measures to ensure that health, safety, environment, human rights are all protected accordingly, in line with both national legal requirements and also hopefully international good practice. Employ engagement experts early. Coming back to my earlier point, this isn't always something that gets done because the focus is very much on the technical and financial and engineering aspects of a project. But it makes sense to employ somebody who's good at engaging with local communities and other stakeholders because they know what they're doing. They're unlikely to make problems rather than solve problems. It's important to understand a project's context, whether that's cultural, historical, political, economic, environmental, and social aspects, so that you can understand the concerns and the views of the stakeholders. Obviously, it's important to communicate honestly and transparently. You won't always have all the right answers or full information because that becomes available at different times during the project's life. But being honest and transparent about what you do and don't know, what the potential risks and impacts, positive and negative, will be, underpins the ability to build that social license to operate. And then finally, understanding stakeholder concerns and views. Those might be quite different from the project's own analysis of its risks or impacts and the opportunities and benefits. And of course, perceptions vary. So two parties, the project and a stakeholder, having completely the same set of information, might come to quite different conclusions about the risks and the negative impacts or the opportunities or challenges. So it's important to understand where the stakeholders' concerns and views differ from those of the project. And stakeholders, of course, it's a very project-specific aspect that needs to be considered. We've given some guidance in the document about who those stakeholders might be, but of course, broadly speaking, it's going to be the local communities, so the residents, people who are coming in and out of those populations, and then around local civic organisations, schools, academic institutions, the the downstream and upstream providers of goods and services, potentially organisations representing other land users. So there's a whole set there that needs to be considered. And of course, the perceptions and the concerns and the way that you interact with those will vary according to the stakeholder type. So there's not a one size fits all. And we've given a sort of a guidance again on the different levels of engagement that you might use for different stakeholders, depending on, in this case, we've broken it down in terms of the influence over the social license to operate against the geographical proximity to the project. There's other ways to do it, of course, but this seemed to be a good fit and allows you to differentiate between the immediately adjacent stakeholders who are most likely to be directly affected by development of a project in positive and negative ways. And then obviously different stakeholders have a different level of influence over social license to operate. And we've split these into low, medium and high priority and made suggestions about how the engagement is done, whether it's informing them, so pushing out information, but don't necessarily expect to have a dialogue with those people who are geographically remote and have little, only limited influence over the social license, right through to more collaborative approaches where it might be a partnership of two or more parties working together to accomplish a specific goal. And an example might be a jointly managed community project that the project and local stakeholders work on together. So again, it's not prescriptive, the guidance. It's trying to give general overview of different approaches for different types of stakeholders that can then be adapted to the specific context of a particular project. And this is really just a summary of the guidelines. Again, if hopefully people will, after this talk, want to go and have a look at these. And really, it's about the preparation. It's about identifying the stakeholders and understanding the stakeholders' interests and perceptions, developing communication materials, and then beginning to disseminate that information. So it's really about preparation, what you need to do behind the scenes to get ready to be effectively engaging. And of course, this is an ongoing process. And then you may need to go back and update materials, update your communication materials, use different methods if what you're attempting first time round is not as efficient as you would like it to be. So there's lots there that you can do in terms of the preparation and the ongoing engagement. And it's really a circular process that just goes on for the life of the project. That's a very short digest of a fairly long document, which is, although it's fairly long, is written for the non-expert audience because that's the most useful way to present it. I'm happy to take any questions now or at the end.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Actually, we're not going to take any questions now because we have to start and keep our eyes in the time. So I will ask now Jane Charman from GEL to step in, take the floor, and provide us with her own presentation. So, Jane, please.
Yeah, Good afternoon.
If you just could also say 1 or 2 words about yourself,
Yes,
that would
of
be
course.
great. Thank you.
Right. Need to get my presentation back to the beginning. It's not moving. Right, I'm going to stop sharing a moment.
No worries. Take your time.
It always works in the practice, and
It's okay. It's okay. You're among friends and colleagues, so please don't worry.
right, okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jane Charman. I'm Community Engagement and Education Manager at Geothermal Engineering, which I will now call GEL for ease. So a quick overview. GEL is the developer and operator of deep geothermal power projects. In 2018, when the company started, we had no idea that the brine would be rich in lithium. So now we have added direct lithium extraction projects to our repertoire. And as you've seen earlier, that we're based in Cornwall, which is in southwest England. So we use a novel concept for our geothermal. We use a deep production well where we bring the geothermal lithium to the surface, and a shallower injection well where we inject the fluid back into a naturally fractured area. So GEL's key mission is to be help the global transition, to place high value on environmental sustainability and circular projects that benefit the community, which I'll talk a bit more about later. Aim to change public perception, which is proving more difficult as we progress through each project, and also to engage as many local services, contractors and suppliers as possible to keep all of the investment as much as possible in the local area and to benefit the community. So if we move on now to SLO for GEL projects. So the project at United Downs has been running since 2018. And so we are lucky that I was employed at that time to do community engagement and education, and therefore to get SLO. But as we've heard from Paul, not everybody has that, so it's important to decide who in your business can actually help achieve SLO. And who in the business will assist. So that could be in the background. So for me, I don't have a drilling or geology background or chemistry, so I rely on all the experts in the business to give me that information, which I can then impart to people. So top tips for being prepared. Know your business story, past, present and future. People expect you to know exactly where your company is, where it's come from and what you're planning to do in the future. Utilize your technical personnel as well, get the information and then work out how you're going to turn that into something that can be understood by the community and major stakeholders. Anticipate questions before they're actually asked. So we produced a series of FAQ sheets which are on our website, so people can go and look at those, so they're not reliant on a member of staff actually helping. And also social media and websites, they're very important, so people can access the information as and when they want. Also look at what went well and not so well at similar projects. So for me, I looked at the fracking industry here in the UK to see what their communication had been like, what they had done, how I could take that and improve it or learn from some of the mistakes that they made. And also be enthusiastic about your company and your job and your projects. If you're enthusiastic, people are more likely to come along on the journey with you. So reiterating what Paul has just gone through with who is the community. So for us, we work with members of parliament and ministers, local government, so local councillors, also residents living in the area, people who are working and going to school in the area, and second homeowners. So Cornwall has a lot of remote areas. So people who work and go to school in an area where you're doing a project may not live there. Likewise, members of parliament and local government are likely to be residents as well. And second homeowners also could be local people. So there isn't this straightforward line of putting everybody in a category. They do mix and match. And so you have to tailor your approach and look at every project as an individual project. So at GEL, we have done community engagement since 2018. So we liaise and collaborate with lots of different people. We have lots of information that people can access at their own time. Plus as well, we are very active in face-to-face communication. We like to be part of the community wherever our projects are. So that means going along and helping at fundraising projects and just generally being there to support people when they're doing things. And at the moment, we have spent over 2.5 million in the local area with contractors, service providers, and hospitality. We also have a community grant fund, which is part of giving back to the community. The grant fund starts off at £40,000 and is topped up once electricity and lithium are being produced. We use a management company, so we lodge the money with them, so the community are assured that the money is safe and will be paid to them. And all that we ask is that the money goes towards something that is for community cohesion and or sustainability. So you can see in the graphic, we have fully or partially funded 14 local projects of very different kinds. And so every project we will have a community grant fund, which will help us work with the community and be part of that community. Education is also very important. So when I first started at GEL in 2018, community engagement was the larger portion of my work and education not so much. At the moment, I think we've just tipped that balance where working in schools is actually more than working in communities. But this doesn't mean that it's not community engagement, because we give students information to take home. We're actually capturing a demographic that is quite hard for us to actually pin down and talk to, which is the sort of 35 to 55, 60 age group. So that is a way for us to work with them. We do all sorts of things, as you can see from the slide, but just recently the UK government has brought in new modern work experience, and we as a company are helping to pioneer that in Cornwall, and we hope that it will actually be used all over the country to promote this for other regions to use and copy what we have done. Often people ask me, why aren't you going out asking people what kind of information, how they want to engage with you? And the simple answer is we try and provide absolutely everything anybody could want. So when people say, I like to read things and take it away and digest it, we have paper leaflets. If people say, I don't want paper, I want digital, then we have websites, social media, a YouTube channel with films and animations. We are trialing VR headsets as well to help people actually get immersive information, and obviously in person is very important. So no matter what people want, we have already got that in the pipeline and they can just tap into that. So it's also important to review, adapt all the way along, all the time. So to begin with, we had information and posters with large blocks of text and very few pictures, which people didn't like. So now we break the text up into smaller portions with pictures and graphics that train the eye to what you want the people to read. Information also had a grey background, which people said didn't actually show what a clean, environmentally friendly project it was. So now we use a white background with vibrant colours. Traditional geothermal maps were difficult for people to understand, so we have created maps that are easy for people to look at. And hospitality is really big when you're hosting or conversing with people. And so we found that the plain biscuits always get left till last. So to keep everybody happy, have plenty of chocolate and fondant filled biscuits available for everybody. So SLO at United Downs, initially it was mixed. There were some people who were in favour, quite a lot of people not, but they were worried and scared. They had a feeling of, not us again, we always get the bad deal. So over time, working with people, having contacts in the local area was a very good, so they could introduce me to people. And consistently showing up time and time again to become a familiar face that people can actually get to know. We don't share a lot of personal information, but just chit chat about what you did at the weekend and things like that make you feel human to them, and therefore they're more likely to actually trust you. And when we introduced the lithium extraction, everybody said, you'd be stupid not to. So there has been no objections and just curiosity. New projects, however, though, are proving to be very difficult. Initially, we get people who are willing to listen and in favour of the project, but now, rather than before, we could deal with objectors one at a time. They now form themselves into groups. They use mis and disinformation to gain a lot of support from people. They have constant pressure to stop people. This is like MPs, government officials, and the local community to stop supporting and start objecting. And they have complete disregard for the multiple benefits of a project. A lot of people are still in favour, but they won't actually stand up and say we're in favour. So it seems that we have lost SLO at a future project. However, we know that once we get the legal dealings over with, that those people will come forward and support us. But SLO, to focus on you. So this year we have brought in a code of conduct. We have had to deal with some very unpleasant people. So we now make sure people know what our tolerance levels are and that we can and will ask them to leave meetings if they are being rude. Also, try not to be alone, have somebody with you. They can be just in the corner working, but as long as you have somebody there with you. It's also important to share your a briefing session afterwards. Share the good times and the not so good times. It's sometimes when you've had a bad encounter to easily forget the good encounters you had. So it's good for people to remind you that actually the bad ones are rarer than the good times. And again, review, take appropriate action, make changes, and resubmit any information that was misunderstood. And don't forget what your actual reason for doing the SLO is. So for us, it's geothermal power and lithium extraction. And all those benefits are really important to keep at the forefront of why you're doing what you're doing to get SLO. And so finally, I've worked on several projects and we lose touch with each other afterwards. So for this project, I'd really like us to carry on working together, sharing information, supporting each other. And as the protesters do, we know it's hard to ignore a collective voice. So if we're a positive collective voice, hopefully we can move forward all together. Thank you very much.
Okay, Jane, thank you very much for that. We have one technical question that I'm gonna keep for the end of the presentations. For now, very quick one for you, Jane. What
Okay.
do you think is the incentive of these people that they always, protest or always being negative about these things? Because it seems to me that actually you're doing quite well when it comes to social acceptance. But still now on new projects, there are always people, and actually they're quite pushy. And it's where actually we can gain knowledge with not with what goes well, but what with goes that creates problems.
I think if I had the answer to that, I could make myself very rich. So
Indeed.
it's happening all over the world. I get contacted by many companies, geothermal companies, any renewable energy companies. In the UK, lawyers offer a no-win, no-fee, so they're incentivized. It seems that after the pandemic, I don't know what happened, but people are more likely to object to things. This is something I'm really working hard on and trying to get to the root of. And if anybody can help, and I think this is why we all need to keep working together afterwards, because collaboratively, hopefully, we can work out why these people are so angry. I mean, we see it with solar farms, wind farms. I follow quite a lot of planning applications, and so it's not just geothermal
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
CRM. So, yeah, if
It's a
anybody
common
can give
trend.
an
It's a common
answer.
trend for anything new. And in fact, you know, when you try to make something good for the environment, for the climate change, as we try with these projects, and people, you would expect that actually social acceptance or social license to operate will come naturally, but it doesn't. And it's quite a subject on its own. Okay, thank you very much for that, Jane. I will now ask Ricardo to step in. Ricardo is the coordinator of SIGS, a project that utilizes also geothermal energy, but also CO2 storage and so on. So Ricardo, if you just want to take the floor, please present a bit yourself and indulge us to the SIGS project.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay, great. So, well, I'm Ricardo Chacartegui. I'm professor of the Energy Engineering Department of the University of Seville, and I'm the coordinator of the CGS project. So this project is almost at the end of its life, and it's a geological Carnot battery approach, and I will comment today here the scope of the project and some advances that we have had. Well, how it started? Well, a few years ago, by chance, in a conference, some of the current partners of the CGS project met, and we started to talk, and there was some people from the energy engineering part and other people coming from the geological side. And we thought we try to look for potential synergies. And we go through first some modeling, some discussions, and in one of the interactions, we found that there was a chance for a very interesting technology, and we apply for trying to demonstrate about its interest. So what we are proposing? Well, we are proposing a closed loop cycle in which we have two different sides. In the charging side, we have a heat pump that is moved by renewable energy, and we have that this heat pump increases the temperature and provides energy to the working fluid that it's partially a fraction is injected in the geological underground for geological underground storage. Depending on the characteristics of the terrain, it also can have some geothermal gain. This loop, the one that you see here in brown, 1, 2, 3, go to the geological storage and close to the 4. A fraction can be is derived in this closed loop, and other go to the geological side. When the energy storage is required, the process follows the different sequence. We have a thermal machine, thermal engine, in which we can produce energy from a turbine coming from A6785B. I assume that you are watching my pointer. So this project is a 3-year Horizon Europe funded project, and the idea is to have a renewable energy storage that combines CO2 geological storage. It has the potential for geothermal heat extraction, even The surface components, surface processes are well known. Let's say that the underground processes, systems are also well known, even though not for the characteristic of continuous charge and discharge, but the challenge that we are addressing in this project is related to the interface between both, because it's a novel operation mode. So we have a continuous injection and extraction related to. The energy storage occurs as mechanical work and thermal energy. We have turbo machinery and components that must be adapted to the specific conditions, and also one potential advantage, also depending on the characteristic of the terrain, are related to the potential permanent CO2 trapping in the terrain that has been studied within the project. We are using CO2 as working fluid, that it has some benefits regarding the properties, regarding potential geological lateral migration, definitive CO2 sequestration, and also some benefits regarding potential thermosiphon effects and enhanced geothermal heat extraction. In these years what we have done? We have tried to, what? A novel concept integrating thermoelectric energy storage with transcritical CO2 cycle. Why? Because it's scalable with high performance and high capacity energy storage. It's a large scale capacity system, and with potential low cost reduced surface impact. And how we are addressing this, how we have addressed this step in the technology? Well, we have gone to TRL4, based on integration of models, components, and energy system integration, a laboratory demonstration of 20 kilowatts power scale, and using experimental data of previous projects. Now we are here, October 2025, so almost finishing. The project has been implemented by partners from 5 European countries and 20 affiliated entities from 20 countries, and with very multidisciplinary, with expertise in energy system, energy storage, geology, geothermal system, and CO2 geological storage and social science. What were the main challenges that we identified at the beginning of the project? The first one was the integration of surface and subsurface components to a system. The second one, conceptual design of novel components adapted to requirements. And the third one, the techno-economic feasibility and impacts, including the social. It's going to be presented later. And what we have obtained through these 3 years? Well, on one hand, one of the columns is the experimental facility that has been built in Dresden, Germany. And with Carvasola here, you have some details about the prototype under operation now in Germany. To summarize the technical achievement that we have reached, we can say that we have provided new knowledge and advances regarding the integration of surface and subsurface components, and we have provided a detailed simulation framework for the thermal energy storage and power production under different conditions, steady and dynamic, and with different conditions and integrations. We have provided analysis and characterization of different applications in Europe and identifying the impact of the technology under different implementations. We have provided at this TRL4 a process design and geological integration concept with detail enough to provide that the result that is feasible and of interest. Regarding the specific design of components, all the main components have been approached, showing that there are feasible designs, and they are not the final designs, but we have shown that there are potential designs that adapt to the conditions required for the analysis in the first block. Also, we have demonstrated that are feasible control and operation strategies that can provide a correct operation for the requirements system. We have gone through the interface between the surface transcritical cycle and the subsurface geological storage, and different modes of operation has been simulated and analyzed, showing the interest of the concept. Besides, and very important, we have gone through the assessment of the potential for transversal intersectoral decarbonization, and risk assessment and life cycle analysis have been developed. We have, after 3 years of very hard work, many different results have been provided, but for instance here, some regarding the interaction between fluid terrain and wells, or regarding the behavior of the heat exchangers and the process under the conditions of CES. To finalize, what lessons have we learned in this pathway, in this route? Well, regarding the project by itself, we have generated new knowledge about components, processes, and integration. We have obtained very promising round-trip efficiencies, very interesting for the large capacity system, above 50%. We have demonstrated that there are feasible components designs. The operation conditions allows to use an abundant storage medium for the thermal side, as water, hot and cold. Cold storage system provide efficient integrations, and also the analysis show that there are clear synergies with industries and thermal integrations with the concept like district heating or district heating and cooling. And what challenges have we identified? Well, I would say I've grouped them in 3 big blocks. The first one, regarding business exploitation, is a very interesting solution. We have demonstrated very good efficiencies, but there is a clear competition with other very interesting energy storage options. Regarding it requires a relevant investment, so it makes challenging this capex for companies, so something to be addressed in that step. Is also, let's say, not only because the competition, not only because of the business strategies, but also how will be the pathway of future. This is directly linked to the second block related to the regulatory framework. In our case, we have there is no regulatory framework for this typology of using as an energy storage. Remember that it's a closed loop. We inject CO2. First, we have to fill the place with CO2, and then once it's filled, we move it in a loop. So there is not a regulatory framework that allows the development currently. It can be for research applications. So it's something to be developed at the future if the technology for commercial exploitation of the technology is a big challenge. That, and also the third block, it's that it's not only how will evolve the technological challenges, even the regulatory challenges, but also other technologies evolution. So it's not so. I would like to conclude that it's a really interesting technology. It's very promising results, but still low technology readiness level and clear challenges for going towards commercialization. But let me tell you that we will try to go to advance in future projects towards higher TRLs, trying to answer these challenges that we identify. Okay, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. Thank you very much. So now it's time to move with Ana Delgado and Ana Prates. So please, ladies, the floor is yours. If you could also say some words for you and your research, that will be great. Thank you.
Of course, Pavlos. Thank you for the opportunity. Just a brief introduction of myself and Ana Prades. We are both sociologists by training and researchers. So we don't work for any company doing SEGs. We work for CEMAT in the case of Ana Prades. It's a government research center concerned with environmental technologies. And I work for a Social Science Institute at the University of Lisbon. So our position is quite different from our colleagues that did the first presentation, because our interest and our participation in this project is solely as researchers. We are not here to promote this technology. We are here to investigate the social acceptability of this technology that our colleagues are developing in SEGs. And so what we're going to present very briefly is the work we developed under the aegis of SEGs, namely its objective, the method, and the main findings. We, like Ricardo has explained, we are at the final stages of the project. It ends in a week or so. And so we've just submitted a deliverable with our results that can be consulted very soon because it will be public. So since SEGs, as Ricardo explained, is a technology that is at a very low technological development level, we were not able to do anything like a social operation license or even social acceptance of the technology, because we could not work with a particular community. And so we are directed our efforts to generate empirical evidence on the social acceptability of this technology among citizens in Spain, Portugal, and Germany, which were the main participating countries of this consortium. We developed a fairly novel approach to the more traditional practice of reconvened focus groups, because besides providing information in between the two sessions of the focus groups, we also had the collaboration of local experts from the consortium that were available to answer questions from participants in the second session. And so we did 2 focus groups in each country, so 6 in total. One was done face-to-face, the other online. We had a sample of about 9 persons per focus group. So in total, we engaged with 54 persons. It's small, but for the purpose of our research, I think it was sufficient. We subcontracted the recruitment to specialized firms, market research firms, so that we would get a fairly diverse sample, even though it's small. We did the moderation ourselves in Spain and in Portugal, but in Germany, since we had no social science partner in the consortium, we had to also subcontract the moderation. We did a first session where we approached the topic of SEGs through framing it in relation to climate change, to renewable energy, but also with carbon capture and storage, because it's a similar technology. And so in the first session, we debated these larger topics to get people to think of SEGs as a piece of the puzzle in this technological ecosystem. And we did a brief introduction to the SEGs technology through a video. Then people went home for a period of 7 to 10 days and received material, written material to study in between. They also had the opportunity to send out questions to an expert. In the second session, we began by a dialogue between the expert and the citizens, in which the expert replied to their questions, and then moved on to a series of exercises that were destined to assess the acceptability of the technology. Risks and benefits, conditions for acceptance, and a final positioning. We had full transcriptions of the discussions and also of the materials that participants produced during the sessions, and we coded everything with NVivo in the case of Spain and MaxQDA in Portugal, and we did a cross-country comparison. The first contact with the technology was done through the video, and we were able to collect those first impressions that show that this technology was not at all familiar, especially because a lot of people have not even heard about CCS, so they could not even match the two technologies. And participants showed high curiosity, but mixed also with questions about risks. They consider that it's an innovative out-of-the-box solution, but also are concerned with risks such as leakages, seismicity, harm to water and soil. Their first reaction was to take refuge in the precaution norm of trust, but verify. So there was no blank checks issued to underground projects. We had some differences between countries. For instance, in Spain, the memory of the failed project Castor is still very high, and so they are highly sensitive to the risk of seismicity. And in Portugal and Germany, they did analogies with nuclear waste and fracking. After receiving the material, reading the material, and receiving the answers from the experts, of course, some of these risk perceptions remained, and they were particularly concerned about environmental risks, but also with the safety of the process, long-term uncertainty, economic and financial risks. So who's going to pay for this? Who's going to ensure this sort of business? But also social political, the issue of rejecting technologies that distract us from the main mission of reducing emissions. And also issues of governance and trust emerge from these risk perceptions. In terms of benefits, citizens did acknowledge that there was an environmental benefit in the sex technology, preventing CO2 from reaching the atmosphere. They also recognize the value in terms of storing renewable energy and the positive impacts in terms of local economy, national economy, and energy sovereignty, the issue of being independent from fossil fuels and from imported fossil fuels. We, looking at both risks and benefits, we realized that there was a balance between them. So we cannot say that risks were considered more pressing than the benefits people recognize. Now I'm going to pass the floor to Anna.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Now, okay, we go ahead with the next slide. And okay, so we also look at after discussing these risk and benefits perceptions and whether there were changes as the participants got a bit more familiar with this technology, we also try to assess the conditions for acceptance. And as you can see, the main headline here could be that governance is as critical as engineering. This could be like the main message. And there were criteria that need to be fulfilled for citizens to be able to accept this potential technology. So safety needs to be proven. Independent verification. I mean, here there was a lot of debate about trust in regulators, trust in academies, need for routine inspections, open data. So there's a need for transparency and independent verification, careful citing. Participants were very aware that a lot of conditions need to be met for this complex technology to be allocated. So they really were keen on the need to meet properly all of them, not just the geological or the technological one, but also the community fit. There is indeed a clear demand for fair value sharing. So what about local benefits? And another important issue is clear liability what happens if things go wrong. And indeed, as already said in the previous presentations, early and ongoing engagement. There were indeed, again, country-specific call-outs in terms of acceptance that are linked to the context and to the specific risk and benefit perceptions in each location, in each country, sorry. And in Spain, seismic diligence is critical, closely linked with the Castor lessons. In Portugal, there was a lot of emphasis on water because this was a special concern for them. And while in Germany, there were demands for regulatory rigor and because of these waste analogies. Sorry. The next, Anna, thank you. So at the very end, we perform a classical social science research method, asking participants to position themselves towards this potential technology. And there were like 5 potential profiles. And in terms of results, as you can see, around 2/3 of our participants in the 3 countries identified themselves as conditional supporters, 1/4 as supporters, and less than 1 in 10 as rejectors. So as you can see, this is like the conditional supporters. Those feel that this may not be ideal, but it can be beneficial if it is properly managed. The next is that, it has a potential, but, and was especially the case in Spain, that there was some kind of strong local distrust. Maybe this has to do with political experiences and traditions in our country, in my country, in Spain. Sorry. There were also quite a few of them in the position of considering this is a fundamental option and that it should be promoted, so those would be the main supporters. And there were a minority that were really against it. And in terms of countries, Spain was really the most critical one, especially because of this lack of trust in the regional management of this kind of technological projects. We also take the chance to assess how the information materials were perceived and assessed by citizens. The materials were the video, the leaflet, the faxes, and maps that were the official information produced in the project, together with the simulated news that we produce specifically to stimulate the group discussion in this process. So as you can see, the main outcomes of this assessment, of this feedback from citizens, was that they really appreciated feel that the content was well balanced, except in Germany. We are all still trying to understand why this is the case. We don't know. We don't have a solid evidence-based answer for this. We will try to find it. But they were concerned about the presentation. They felt that it was too dense and difficult to understand, especially the video. The language was considered to be too technical, even after being through the project, tried to adapt it to the more common lay citizens' language. Citizens felt that it was still too technical and that it was confusing and difficult to follow. A relevant aspect for us, at least as sociologists, is that participants were really claiming for a societal framing of this technology to help them to understand it. I mean, why is it here? How does it relate to my daily life? And this kind of questions, so societal framing. And they also highly appreciated this multi-format, the fact of having videos, leaflets, and different kinds of formats. And then this is the last the last slide. As part of our research project, we always try to get feedback from our colleagues from other disciplines on the usability of our findings. I mean, how useful do you think this will be for you in the future, or whatever. So we performed some kind of feedback exercise, a dynamic exercise in the very last project meeting, in the last General Assembly, less than a month ago. And here you have more or less a summary of the kind of answers that we receive. We think this is important in terms of why are we doing this kind of research within these so technological projects, and how, maybe going to the potential discussion later on, how this research relates to with the more company-based or company business-based approach to engagement and through social lines, license to operate, or these kind of things. So very briefly, as you can see, this kind of evidence, empirical evidence, scientific empirical evidence-based results are appreciated, as they could constitute the basis for enhanced communication and framing strategies. They could help to promote awareness on the need for an adoption rollout strategy, this idea of starting from demonstrators, early adopters. This was also interesting in our view. It's like an increased awareness on the need for the technical validation and evidence, even in a technology with such a low TRL, sorry. But for other participants, this kind of research that we are doing, they do not see it very helpful at this stage of TRL. It is perceived that it is like too soon to try to address this kind of evidence or findings or interactions with citizens. Okay, maybe there are things to be discussed here later on, but this is all from our side. Many thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. We now at the Q&A session, and we have 3 questions at least. The first one, I think it's a general one, and I think it's Catherine. I think you are the best person actually to answer that. It comes a question like if there are also projects in Netherlands, which I presume there must be, but if you are aware of any of those, perhaps. And the other one is even more general, where research takes place on geothermal fluids. So perhaps I assume that the gentleman asks, or the lady, I'm not so sure, where main research centers are based in EU.
Okay, maybe first on the Netherlands. So in our geothermal fluid database, we also included fluid samples from the Netherlands. So there you can look up the fluid for different sites in the Netherlands and find out what elements are contained in this fluid. I know that also the colleagues from TNO in the Netherlands, they have try to make a similar exercise, especially for the Netherlands, and they will have a more complete database for the Netherlands because they also have access to data that is not publicly available, while we in our database only have the public information displayed. And well, maybe for this second question, where research takes place, in our project, so in the CRM-geothermal project, we have conducted research mainly in Europe. So so in different European countries, so we concentrated actually on 5 different focus sites. So one is in Iceland, in Reykjanes area. Then we had sites in Turkey, in Tuzla and Sirferisa. We had sites in Cornwall, obviously, and then the North German Basin as one of the larger areas which we investigated. And finally, we also had sites in the East African Rift, where we also did fluid sampling and sampling campaigns. And then the research centers, where you can have a look at the website. We have partners from 10 different European countries, and also one Kenyan partner in our project.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. The next questions are for Jane, and there are also questions for both Anna. So I will start with Jane. There is one question from Joanna. So the first one is, how long does it actually take to win local communities approval? And I suppose that's based on your experience with the project.
Yeah, so at United Downs, we gained a majority of support quite quickly. People, because it's a heavily mined area, people understood about the subsurface. At the second two sites, it's very strange. They're running in parallel. One, we have gained support very quickly. Once we got permitting, then a lot of people said, well, you've obviously passed all the due diligence, so yep, we're happy now, we can support you. Whereas the other site that's happening exactly the same time are just totally unaccepting. So we're still having to work very hard with that community. So it really is different at every site.
Okay. Next question also for you. I mean, you have 4 questions, so let's
Okay.
see and try. I will also keep time for Anna Delgado and Anna Prados. What would a good balance of outreach channels which prove effective on long term?
So definitely being present, so face-to-face meetings, going to events that are organised by the community. So having stands at, say, summer and Christmas fairs where you're available for people to talk to as they want. And definitely the website as well. So our website has changed. We're on our 3rd iteration at the moment. So at the early days of United Downs, it was a lot of technical, a lot of geological information, whereas now our website has less of that information and sort of more of a high-level corporate business type information.
And is that a way of monitoring the effectiveness of your social engagement strategy, or you have also other means?
Not no real logging method because it seems to change depending. I mean, if you're talking to older people, then they prefer to speak to you in person. When you're speaking to younger people, they're pushed for time, they have constraints, so they want to go to online information. So because we have everything that's available, should somebody come to us and say, we actually want this information in this format, we generally have it ready for them.
Okay. And how do you fight mis and disinformation? I suppose you partly answered that on the past, but maybe also recap.
Yeah, so you just have to keep reiterating the true factual information, being present, being available to answer questions in person or online or via email, and to keep that focus on what you are doing, to not go down a rabbit hole of engaging or trying to actually turn around the disinformation. Just keep pushing out actual, factual, very simple, plain to understand information.
Plain language. Okay, thank you
Yep.
very much. And now moving to Ana Delicado and Ana Prades. Everard asked, how did you select the people for the focus groups? Based on the concerns voiced, they must have had some knowledge about geology. So I think, irrespectively of that, it's what was the methodology behind picking up people that provide feedback?
Well, we used market research companies because they have large databases of people who are willing to participate in focus groups. We put some conditions for the selection. They had to have at least secondary education because the topics we were discussing were so complex that if we had citizens with lower education levels, it would be very difficult. We also asked for a balance between gender and age groups. And also in one case, we asked for people who had some training in geology or engineering, energy engineering, and also we admitted people with a background in environmental issues, activists, just for one of the groups. The other group was meant to have pure lay citizens, even though I don't like this term. And so we asked for people who were interested in getting into a discussion about these topics. We produced a survey, some questions, which people had to answer to be selected for the focus groups. And we did that in all 3 countries. Is there anything you want to add, Anna?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, we still have another question for you. That one goes related to the social acceptance studies. How would site selection be envisaged? Any ideas on that? I mean,
Yes.
I suppose the idea is like we have this nice concept, but we would like to pick up a side that social acceptance will become, not a major issue. How that, what kind of studies someone has to perform.
Könnt ihr draußen bleiben, bitte?
The first, my first reaction would be that, we do social science research, we do not have like this crystal ball that we can do like predictions of what is going to happen. This is like the first. The second one would be that what is really important is that once potential sites are even starting to be under discussion, the local populations need to be, so there's like this early engagement, not once decisions have been made, then we go to the local communities and check how do you feel about that, but it is whether would you like to have this, while the decision making is still open. And I don't know, as far as sex is concerned, our participants already were quite clear in terms of what could be the main criteria for the acceptance, and they have to do a lot of and they have a lot to do with how this technology will be managed. I mean, it is about governance many times and much more than the specific features of the technology in itself, very broadly speaking. Anna, maybe you would like to add something.
Well, it's a technical decision first and foremost, because it has to be in places where there are geological conditions that are suited for storing the CO2 and pulling it back to the surface again. So first it's a technical decision, but then the participants did mention some conditions. They didn't want this sort of facility close to homes. They would rather that brownfields would be used, so areas which have already industrial past and industrial remnants in some cases. But it's like, I think, what happens in the first project in Cornwall. It is located in a place where there's already a lot of mining, and there was a lot of mining. So people have that familiarity with this sort of underground use of resources. So in this case, also, it's not something that is going to be discussed. Also, there was the issue of being close to renewable energy sites, so it could work as a storage for that without having to go long distances to transfer the energy. So there are sets of technical conditions, and then we can talk about social acceptance and discuss social acceptance.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. There is one more question for Jane or Paul. I think that will be the last one. The question writes, one of you spoke about talking about the good and the bad days. Does this include sharing how the company or companies in the sector have done with compliance? In my experience, social acceptance can be helped by the public hearing that regulation and enforcement is real and companies will face consequences if they are non-compliant. the public get comfort from hearing this. So Jane or Paul, do you have anything to add on this comment?
Yeah, I can comment first. So in the UK, people don't seem to trust the government or the local government in doing their job properly. So even though GEL follows all the guidelines, gets all the surveys done, follow all the rules and regulations, people don't believe that the authorities have put good enough boundaries and rules and regulations in place to begin with. So that's where the problem lies for us, in that we follow the rules and regulations, but some of the population aren't trustworthy of the government and the local authorities. So I don't know, Paul, you want to add some more?
I can just maybe give some international context. It's very similar in a developing country context, and the issue there is that communities generally want to work directly with the companies because they trust the companies more than they trust the government, particularly when it comes to community projects and compensation and those kinds of things. So it's a similar problem that that there's a disbelief about the capacity or the truthfulness of those sort of intermediates from government departments and government agencies. So again, yeah, just like in the UK and many other countries, I think there's a general downturn in trust of authority figures, whether that's government or scientists or people who seem to know what they're talking about but are disregarded. So I think it's a universal problem, not just developed, but also other countries as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't think, I mean, this is getting exciting, actually, asking all these questions when it comes to social license to operate or social acceptance. And the social questions actually are very important if we want a project, whether it's a research one or commercial. The social element is it's one of high importance. And I think Anna Delicado and Anna Prades will certainly agree with me that every project should have also the social acceptance matter be investigated. I think it's very important these days. Otherwise, we all know quite a lot of nice projects that sometimes it didn't succeed it because social acceptance or social understanding, whatever you like to call it, didn't move forward. So many thanks for this. Thank you very much. This is one of the last things for SIGs. Ricardo, I don't know if you want to say something very quickly, 10 seconds.
Oh, thank you very much, all of you, for the participation. And it's very important to have this feedback regarding the social acceptance. It's very important for further steps because it shows the interest or what things are of interest for the potential stakeholders or for the general public. And it's very important also to pay attention to the things that they are critical or the things that they are concerned. So it's really, really valuable, the feedback that we have got. And thank you for the great work. And thank you to the rest of presenters for their participation.
Thank you, thank you. And one last thing from Catherine. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, well, I can only second Jane's statement. That would be great to continue working together and really bring this to the next steps and see how we can improve things. And as Jane has also mentioned, find out why people are more resistant after the pandemic and have formed more of these groups that are resisting to everything, essentially. I think this is one of the key questions that our society has to find out.
Yeah, it was great to have the company's perspective from the social acceptance, but also the research, the objective eye of trying to understand what are the mechanisms behind, so we can answer real questions, really. So thank you very much for your attendance, for this active discussion, your participation, and that will conclude today's webinar. Thank you very much for everything. Bye then.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good day. Bye.
Thanks.